Hi, I'm Lisa Renee Jones, and I am here today with my fabulous agent, Louise Fury, and she certainly has not been my first agent.
No. She's not my first client either.
But I absolutely think that we have a good marriage here, and so that's what we're talking about, is that there are so many people who ask me, how do you find a good agent? You know, and also a lot of people who are just excited to get an offer from any agent.
Right.
And so what I want to talk about today is how that's the bottom line, is that it's like a marriage.
Yes.
You know, one man is good for you that's not good for you, you know, for somebody else. I mean,
it's a business partnership, and actually when I'm offering representation to a client, I always sort of have a conversation about, let's go into business together. This is how our relationship's going to be. This is how we're going to attack this business of books, of your company, which is all your books and your sort of career trajectory. It's really, I'm going to invest in you and you're going to invest in me, and we're going to sort of make an investment together, and that's going to kind of be the founding of our relationship. So it is like a marriage. But it's also, you know, like a marriage is a contract.
It is a contract.
It's a business dealership.
And it can end, or
Yeah.
it begins and it can end, and it can have bumps that were worked out. So,
right.
I mean, I think I use that comparison simply because I want people to understand there's a commitment there.
Yeah.
And
sometimes misunderstandings and miscommunication, and so as long as you sort of constantly sort of talking about the relationship and the things that your goals, it really can work out.
But let me just say, from an author's perspective, this is where I'm going to say, here's the things I like about you, but things that I have experienced in the past to be different. You're saying communicating, talking, planning. Many agents do not communicate, talk, and plan. They don't even answer their emails. You do.
I try. When I'm there.
No, you do a great job. But I also want to caution authors to understand that you're not the agent's only client, and they have a tremendous amount of pressure on them. And you have to understand that they have meetings and they have things that they're doing. And I go back to, I used to be a headhunter in the staffing business, and I remember that people would be calling me all the time, and they want to know what's happening, what's happening, what's happening. Well, I'm not on the phone making calls for you right now because I'm telling you for the 10th time what's happening.
Right.
So you have to understand that agents have to have some room to work. So there's a balance there, and finding a relationship that's that comfortable balance where you communicate together. But you're a great communicator.
But there are some times when I've said to you, oh, this is going to happen, and you're like, when did this happen? I'm like, I've been working on it for a few weeks.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
But it was a great surprise.
Yes, that's true. Sometimes it happens where sometimes I'll wait to give the news until I know it's good news, or give the bad news until I know it's bad news. So when things are sort of like, or I'm thinking about something, it depends on the situation, but
see, here's the thing about Louise that I love, and that's that she is always thinking.
Yes.
She's always looking at you and going, here's this, what can I do about this and do about that? All agents are not like that. But, again, I go back to different personalities that work together, because, because she is always looking and working and trying, I would think that if somebody didn't seem like they felt like she was working and acted like they weren't, it would be offensive because you're working so hard.
And it is, yeah, and that's true. And then I forget sometimes they don't know. They're not in the office. They don't see how many calls you're making. If every single time I mentioned your book to an editor or to somebody that I wanted to discuss it with, if I had to write out the minutes of every time I discussed your book, it would be so much that I would never get anything done. So I'm constantly talking about projects, and I'm constantly talking about authors. But I haven't told them, oh, yesterday I spoke about you in a meeting, because it might just have been a sentence, or I might just have said, do you do romantic suspense? And the editor said no. And then, it doesn't mean that I didn't do anything for you this week. It just means that this week there wasn't anybody that really connected to something, like your work. So I think, and then I forget that authors don't know that. So when I have had a client say to me, I don't feel like you're doing all that you can. And in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm doing more than I can. I'm really overwhelmed with this thing that's happening. But I think that I always try to put myself in their shoes and then come around with, okay. I've had situations where an author has said, I don't think this is working. And I have said, actually, I really like your stuff. how can we keep going and make this work? Because obviously there's something that's disconnected, and obviously you feeling like this isn't working when I'm thinking everything's fabulous.
Well, I can say that from an author's perspective, we sometimes feel very secluded at home, and we think nothing's we don't have any power to make things happen.
I know.
It's this hurry up and wait. So sometimes we get antsy. And I know there's been times when I've emailed you and said, I'm trying not to email you, but I gave in and I have to email you. And I'll sit there, because I'll sit there and go, gosh, she does not want to hear from me again right now. I know she doesn't. And I feel bad, but I'm climbing the walls.
But sometimes just getting the email out will help you sort of digest it. Even if I just say, things are good, or that sounds great. Sometimes just hearing a sentence of like, oh, we're still connected.
Yeah. And I think, in our case, we had a lot of stuff that happened really early on. I'm sure it's harder. Well, I know it is harder from other situations before you I've been in, when you've set up submissions and you're waiting forever, and it feels like forever, even if it's not forever, but it feels forever for the author.
I know it does. It feels forever for me.
Yeah.
When my author's getting rejected one time, I'm getting rejected 17 times. I get rejected every day.
That's hard.
Yeah. That's hard. And I actually, most of the time I'm going, oh, they're such idiots for not buying this. But, because I believe in the work that I send out. But a lot of the time it's like wearing a Teflon vest and taking a bullet. And it hurts. And it's like, whoa. And then I take the bullet out and put it in a little box and wrap it up and go, here's a little bullet that I collected for you. It hurt, but don't worry about it. Things are good, and the author feels good, but I'm like,
Yeah.
It does work like that.
Yeah, that's hard. That's very hard. So, talking about that, you said something just now. You said how you really believe in the projects you send out.
Yes.
But I know at one point when I was agent shopping, I remember an agent saying to me, well, I liked it. It's, but here's the thing with me, I think it's marketable. And what matters to me is that it's marketable. It's not necessarily about whose writing I love or don't love or this or that. It's marketable. And I thought, it's marketable? But, so you pretty much just said you don't love it. And I thought, I don't want an agent that doesn't love my work. And I will just, warn people, authors, that you don't want somebody who doesn't passionately love your work. Everybody around you needs to love it, and as painful as it is to have to make a decision to say, I don't know if that agent really loves my work. I also don't, know if they're going to do with it what, I would like them to do, that they need to walk away, because, I know when I talked with you initially, it was like, here's what my idea is for you. And you offered that to me. In many cases, agents don't, but authors need to ask, what is your plan for my career? See how it matches, and if they totally disagree with where you want to go, it's not the right match.
And we came up with a plan, and then we changed it.
We did.
I know, right?
Which was good,
exactly.
though.
We came up with a plan, and then I read the book and was like, can I please just give me a month, give me a time limit, and we had yes, because I really loved it. So yes, and that's another thing, it's an evolving process, and if you don't evolve, I feel anyway, if you don't evolve and leave room to change the process, even halfway or in the middle or 2 days in, then, it's really hard to sort of make something happen. I always talk about this is my plan, but I have to leave room so that if I need to change it, so that it fits with something else or goes to the right place, it's important to.
So I would think, at least from my perspective, I'm thinking maybe from yours, that in that initial conversation, if you're talking and they want something, you want something, and you find that you go, oh yeah, that's great, and you're interacting well, that's terrific. But if you hang up or they hang up with okay, they're just stuck in their way and they're not listening to ideas, or they're just stuck in their way and not listening to ideas, that you might know that it's not going to be that good.
Well, part of the conversation of representation is I would never email somebody and say I'm going to call you to offer representation. I normally say I'm going to call you to talk about the project, because part of it is to see how we're going to work together, and a big part of agenting is managing expectations. I want to make as big a deal as you want to make, because this is our business that we're doing together. We're going to both make money off this. We're going to both grow from this. We're both going to sort of build careers on this. So I'm never going to take the worst deal. I'm not going to try and take the least money or the one that's bad for you, but sometimes it just doesn't happen.
But there are some agents out there that'll take any deal just to make a deal to let it go. But in general, a good agent should be looking for people they think are marketable, that they can make the best possible deal with. And they can't always make as high a deal as they want, but you know that they're always trying.
Yes, and sometimes it's as high a deal as you can get.
Yeah, I mean...
It's not always what you want.
Yeah, it's just...
Sometimes you get more than you thought you would ever get, and sometimes you get much, much less. But sometimes actually a lesser deal is sometimes better than a bigger deal, depending on where the house is and what the distribution is, and if it's a young adult or a picture book or an erotic romance. You know, and I do love the stuff that I take on, but I also have to love it, and it has to be marketable.
Right.
So I can't just love it. I've done the books that I've loved and it hasn't sold, or it's sold 2 years later, or, you know. So as I've grown as an agent, I've also learned to combine the two together. So I do sign authors whose writing style and whose vision I love, and then have sometimes worked with them on things that are marketable right now. And I have signed things that are marketable and that I've really loved, but if the author gives me something later on that I don't love, I have to be honest and just... Sometimes I pass on the project, because sometimes you really need somebody who firstly knows how to do it, and there's some books that I just don't know how to take to market. You know, if somebody gave me a high fantasy, if Game of Thrones came into my office, I would not have signed it, and I would have thought it wasn't going to sell because it wasn't for me. But I watched that movie, that series religiously.
Right.
You know, like I can't read the books to save my life, but I don't. Ooh. But if it came in, because, and that author might have felt rejected, but really it just was not the project for me.
Right.
Even now that I know it's a multi-million-dollar empire, I could not have done that for him.
Because that's just not the thing that clicks with you, right?
Right. So, I wouldn't know how to talk about it, I wouldn't know who to go to, I wouldn't know how to pitch it, I wouldn't know how to position it in the market. But
the great thing is that a good agent knows that, and so they don't take those books because they want the person in the project to end up with the right person, just like you want to have the right people that help you. That's all about success. But okay, so kind of a rapid fire. No agent or agent, or no agent or wrong agent. Which is better?
No agent.
That's what I tell people.
A wrong agent can get you into a really bad contract that you have to sign. The agent does not sign the contract. So an agent is never legally obligated to follow through on a contract that you sign. So if it's a bad agent, if you sign a contract that with a press or publisher that has bad terms or ties you into something you can't get out of, it's you that's been tied in, not the bad agent. And even if the wrong bad agent is no longer your agent, you still have that contract that you signed. So I would be really careful. And I think having a good agent is somebody, you know, when I was a new agent, we actually worked together very early on in my career, but I was with an agency that had been around for 20 years, and, you know, you really want a reputation behind.
Well, let me comment on my reasons for going with Louise, because I had been with some pretty big agencies, but young, hungry, and aggressive.
There we go.
Yes, that matters. And also, a lot of times people will look at what clients does this agent represent? But the question I tell people to ask is, what clients did they make? Or what clients did they inherit? Because what you want, especially as a new author, but I think always, is the agent that's actually selling them and making their careers. Yes. Many times something happens once an author does sell, and even sells well, and they move to another agent, for whatever, I mean, who knows why. But so you have to go back and say who initially sold these people. So don't think that the agent's great just because of that. Also, I mean, this is just a reality. Sometimes agents get kind of like fat cats in that they've sold a whole lot of people, they're making a whole bunch of residual commission, and are they still hungry to sell books? I found sometimes those really established agents are not hungry to sell books. Yeah. And so when I talked with Louise, I was like, there was just some sort of magic I felt. I'm like,
I felt it too.
I was like, this is good.
It was good, yeah.
Yeah.
And we were really, I think one thing that clicked with us is that we were really into monetizing all avenues of revenue. Like we want to make sure that it's not just selling a book, it's looking at all the rights and the big picture of.
Yeah, that was really important to me. I mean, one of the things that initially brought me to Louise was not being able to look at all my options for foreign rights properly. So, I mean, you might have a good I actually once left an agent because she was really a great agent, but one, she got a reputation for only selling low amounts. Everybody knew she had an eye to find everyone, but she would take a low deal, so they just all editors knew that. And she had no foreign rights department, so she always gave away your foreign rights, so they knew that for that money. I really respected the agent as a person. I thought they were super ethical, and that is huge. And I didn't want to leave, and I was shaking when I told him I did not want to, but it was a strictly business decision. Right. When I went with Louise, I mean, she had it all. And I didn't even have to ask about those things. She was already telling me about them and on it. Right. Unfortunately, for a lot of new authors, they don't know to look at what are their options on their contracts and different things that can affect them in a career in ways that's just scary. Right. But what are things that, well, before I go there, how long, like say an author's with you and they haven't sold, and you want to sell them, but they haven't. Is there a point where an agent goes, I'm not doing this for this person, it's not working? And
yes, and I have done that, where I am obviously not making this work, and it's not because I don't love it, it's because I've tried everything and it hasn't happened. And I love the project and I love the author, but I don't want to keep the author from selling it. If there is somebody who could do a better job, sometimes you want that person to go find that person. If I've explored all options and there's nowhere else to go, either we move on to a new project and I try it again, and often when that happens, and it has happened too, and we do sometimes sell because we've learned from the previous project, but there have been times when we've parted ways, very amicably. And other times it's sold after 2 years. I've had people that have sold after 2 years. I've had people who've sold after a year to their dream house because we went back again, or like we kept going because we knew that there was something there. It really is, again, you've got to really evaluate all sort of all the details, because there's no really cut and dry answer.
What about what's your feeling on indie versus debut? You smile because of me, I know.
What do you mean indie versus debut?
Well, I mean, how do you feel about taking on an author that's done indie work and then do you try and sell that project? Do you prefer they do a new project? I mean, what do you think the market is even saying to do with that?
I think that I personally like an author who has explored all avenues open to them. I like authors who are smart and savvy. So smart and savvy means self-publishing in this climate. I mean, in this the self-publishing climate, in this kind of landscape. And also, but it's all what you publish. If I see that you've published something and I look at the first few pages and it's unedited or formatted incorrectly or it has a terrible cover, that tells me who you are as a business person.
Not savvy. And
so actually, I love the self-publishing industry because the new sort of boom, because I get to explore you as a business person before I even call you, right? And I do. I Google you, I look at all the covers. If I see that you've explored self-publishing and that you're just throwing stuff out there, or I feel that it was done in sort of a hodgepodge way, I've already formulated in my mind how you do business. And so that has really helped me sort of cull the herd kind of thing. But I do like my authors to make money. So I've taken on a lot of indie authors like you who've traditionally published before, became indie authors and wanted to do both. I've done quite a couple of these wonderful deals where you go from indie to traditional and back again. And I've also had authors, ask me to publish their stuff as sort of like an agent, and I'm really just not a publisher, And some authors are not publishers, and I totally get that too. But I think that the market right now is the indie publishing, a few are rising to the top, and I think that there's so much content that it's a little more difficult than it was a year ago.
Oh, definitely.
And I think that tides are going to be changing all the time, and I find that exciting. Like, I know that people get terrified about change in publishing. I've only been in this industry for like 3.5, 4 years, so I came in at a time of change. So to me, it's all very exciting. It's like the Wild West, It
has been the Wild West.
Yeah, and that's great. You get on your horse and you plant your flag, and you plant your flag, and you've got your team behind you.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah, well, I know I just gave a little talk on self-publishing, and I said any advice that I gave last year, I promise you, has dramatically changed this year. I mean, you have to be looking at the market constantly.
Right.
It's just changing.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm a firm believer that, you know, it's changing so much that you can't close the door on anything. You should be open-minded.
And, you know, and also, again, like, you know, any author who's bad-mouthed any form of publishing, whether it's traditional, self-publishing, digital, indie, whatever it is, if you have bad-mouthed in such a way that you have burnt bridges, I don't find that attractive or smart at all. And so, if you want to do it for yourself, that's fine, but I don't want to be in business with someone like that. So that's a big part of how I evaluate it too.
Oh, I totally agree. Years ago when I was in business, I remember we had this client and they were not very nice, but I bowed us out, you know, nicely, but my right arm person got really cranky and nasty, so there was this other huge account, and it wasn't, I mean, it wasn't a small industry like this one, but yet another huge account I went in to sell, and the person came out to me and said, I like you, but guess what? I will never do business with you as long as she works for you.
Wow.
And so, to me, when I came into publishing, I remember little things like that. Like, you can't believe how small the world can be. And publishing actually is a very small world.
Right.
But you can't believe how small all business can be. And somebody who's here could be could be this other place later. They could be an agent later. They could be,
and yes.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think another thing is that I think it's a big responsibility when you succeed at something in publishing and you talk about it, which means you're educating people about it, that you have to be very careful about what you say, because you're changing the lives of the people who are listening to you.
That's so true.
Right? So if you advise everyone to only self-publish, and the people that aren't supposed to be self-publishing because they don't know how to do it as a business, or they just throw something up, or they, you know, or they don't, you know, they do it incorrectly, and they burn bridges themselves, you could be ruining their careers. You could be... I get emails all the time from people asking me to look at their stuff because they... And this is my phone ringer. Right?
That's the one she puts on when I call.
No, her one's like an ambulance.
Oh, God. I don't even know what to say to
A
that.
fire brigade. Bells, wedding bells, I don't know. That was my husband's ring, so it's like a horn honking. What was I even saying? I don't even know. No, but I think educating people and advising them to do one thing and thinking that everyone who's listening should do this thing is really, you know, it's really something that, it's a big responsibility.
I also think people forget that everybody who has this passionate drive to only do this or only do that, and they're speaking up really, really, really loudly about it, what is their backstory? What is motivating them and driving them to do that? Is there some bitterness there? Is there something that's happened? What is their motivation? Because if you're going to make a decision about yourself long term, you should really look at where is this information coming from and look at the whole big picture.
And I think it's an opportunity to sort of educate in a positive way. So if you have really done really well at self-publishing, I think it's wonderful that you tell everyone about it and that you tell them how you did it and that you sort of share the information. But you shouldn't be bashing something. This is not, you know, I don't think you should take the opportunity to sort of turn against something because something else worked.
That's right, that's right.
You know, I think that a lot of things work for different people.
Because, of course, you know, I love self-publishing. It's been very good to me. Yeah.
Yes.
And I love that you're so supportive of it. But I absolutely, for me personally, a balance of New York and self-publishing works. But I tell people all the time, you have to make your own decisions.
Right.
I'll tell you why I made mine. But ultimately, please educate yourself and make your own decisions.
And, you know, I mean, I've had people that are exhausted. It's a big job.
Oh, it is exhausting. It is.
It's exhausting. Some of my authors are just exhausted, but because they're working like you at full capacity. As a business, you've got your cover artists, you've got your editors, you've got your copy editors, you've got your beta readers, you've got your agent, you've got your foreign agent, you've got your film agent.
But you know what? I think that some people have this illusion that if you go with New York Publishing, you don't need to do all those things. You need to do it with both. I do it for both.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, it might feel exhausting, but it's educational. It's also taking you to that next side of the the rainbow, so to speak.
Running a business is exhausting.
It is.
Every business, any business, but agenting, everything. You know, being an author is a business, and it's hard work and it's tiring.
But some people don't understand. It's not just about the book of your heart as much as you want it to be. It's about a business. Publishers have a P&L. They have profits that they have to make, and there's nothing wrong with an author wanting to make money, because if they're making money, all the other people who are a part of their business, their career, are making money.
Right.
So, but anyway, well, I think this was great, and thank you.
Thank you.
And wait, one last question. I told you I was going to ask you this. I'm going to ask it just because I want to hear your answer. So, what can I do to really piss you off and get fired? No, don't talk to me personally. Generally, I just was joking, because I don't think I want to even know that answer. No, just what can an author do that would just, it's like it's pet peeves of agents. None of you like it. I don't want you to speak of yourself, because that's between you two on the spot. A general thing, what do agents really dislike?
I can't speak for other agents, and I try not to be negative, right?
I know.
Right? I wanted to say like things that you should do, but I mean, I don't know. I think it's a hard question to answer, because it depends why you're doing it and what you're doing, and I mean, if one of my clients was looking for another agent without telling me, and I found out, I think we would part ways. But they would want to part ways anyway, so, you know.
Yeah, that's not.
You know,
that's pretty known.
All my clients are really, I don't.
But are there just these, you hear agents talking, these general pet peeves?
At the paint agency, we really talk about the positive stuff.
And she's a great salesperson, which works out really well for me. So on that note, good luck everyone with your careers and your agent searches.